like to hear.
And we're going to try and separate a lot of the hype from the truth today, and we're going to move really, really fast. So, and hopefully give you guys time for questions. First of all, this is the Theta camera. Has anybody ever heard of the Theta cam? Raise your hands. Great. So the lovely Helen will be filming this first 5 minutes of our panel by pushing this little button here, and then we'll give this to Tracy so that she can post it. So welcome, and I know that after lunch, ooh, you just hold it.
I just turned it off, I think.
Oh, no, you're on. Hold on. And it happened to Bill Gates. It could happen to me. Okay. So while I'm doing this, how many of you, okay, and then all you do is you push that. It's when the light goes up. Yes, thank you. How many have been inside a Gear, Oculus, Vive, or Sony Morpheus? That's great. So we're not going to be telling you anything new because, you know, it's really hard to show VR up here. So I usually will start out, before I introduce our esteemed panelists today, just some of the things that have happened in the last week. Because if you don't follow VR, oh, by the way, I'm Brian Hurst. I'm from Storytech. You might know about us from CES, Storytech at CES. We're doing VIP tours. Thanks. We advertise Tracy. Tracy advertises us. If you're going to CES and you want a great tour experience, take our VIP tours. They're just custom for storytellers. Okay, so in the last week, Nokia had a big party to show how much work they've done on their Ozo camera, a $60,000 adventure for VR. This is only $249. And his automatic stitching. We'll talk a little about that. Instagram and Oculus announced a collaboration for teleporting, in other words, to give people the experience of being there. Best Buy and Amazon are out of stock, sold out of the new Gear, the $99 version. So if you wanted to get that for your loved one for Christmas, good luck. Go buy the Viewmaster for $39, and then you can get the other one later. Jump VR has people doing playlists right now. You all know about Jump VR and Google? We'll explain some of these things. Wired 360 video. Wired, the magazine, did a 360 video of the Lion King performance. So for those of you that wanted to stand on stage and hold your own baby lion up, you could do that. Star Wars. So announcement yesterday came out. Have you seen it? Have you seen it? I haven't had time. Have you seen it? So Star Wars has a spy adventure for you. You have to go capture the spy with Google Cardboard and Verizon. Notice, Verizon funding it, but anybody can access it. It's serialized. It is actually the first serialized VR series. So I haven't had a chance to experience it, so it's only a day old. The new Gear VR announced a web browser yesterday, so now you can browse the web from inside that. CCP Games, anybody know about Eve Valkyrie? Obviously not gamers. CCP Games, last fall they hacked Kinect with an Oculus DK2 and had people in the same environment, which AltSpace does now. They just got $30 million to do more. They're from Iceland. Next VR announced their $30.5 million round. And Kevin Spacey, who says VR is the next Netflix, invested in Woofbert. Other verticals are exploding, which is like cars and medical care, journalism, education, engineering and training, and they're might be likely to sustain us. And let's see. Fusion announced their Fusion VR in August. You guys did the Democratic debates. You are going to release the first VR comic book. So these are just some of the things that are happening. And Christian Stephen, did anybody see Welcome to Aleppo? Okay, you can go on video to see it, or you can see it actually inside your Gear headsets. Would that we could all give you one for free today. So Stephen Christian, long story short, snuck into Syria with a video, gave him a camera rig, and he shot what was going on in Aleppo. He snuck out, he knew he'd be arrested, he buried the SD cards, they did arrest him, the British got him released, he traveled back to the border, dug up the VR cards, edited it, put it up, and he said that this is the most important, VR is the most important journalistic tool he has ever had. So, our panelists today. Daniel Ellenberg from Fusion, and if you can't get Fusion on your cable network, you can certainly get it on your Apple TV, especially the new Apple TV. Helen Situ from NextVR. Helen and I are like separated at birth. I know we look like we're different races, but really we're not. And VR Evangelist with NextVR, they did the Democratic debates. Did anybody use the VR experience at the Democratic debates? Great. Yvette Vargas, multi-platform storyteller before we called it multi-platform storytelling. And now releasing Dark Prophet, which was a series with Henry Rollins, right? Rollins.
Yeah, Henry Rollins.
Yes, and we'll talk a little bit about that. But first we got a little video to see to let you know that VR is here. Simon, if you please. And it did just kind of get real. So with mobile exploding, the purpose of our panel today is to talk about what traditional media is going to do and what we feel the obligations are to an audience. Is this a fad? Or are we just getting started? Is it not going to happen in entertainment? How do you monetize it? So I want to start, first we're going to start with Helen's video. And this is from NextVR. Have you all heard of NextVR? Okay, well, you will.
Great.
I'll take this from you.
It was fantastic. I felt like I was in the front row.
Okay, so in the panel that was the social TV panel, the second wave, they talked about, I forget who it was that said it. She's probably in this room, so stand up and take credit for it. When we said the revolution would be televised, she said the revolution would be live streamed. And live streaming is a big deal right now. And it looks to me like NextVR is the only live streaming company. You did PGA, you've done basketball, you did hockey.
Right, we did the opening game of the NBA season, so the Warriors against the Pelicans. That was incredibly compelling. We had 3 different live streams at the same time, so we were switching between perspectives on the court. We had you courtside, of course, on the scorer's table, right there in the action. You could see the ESPN cameraman to your right, and Steph Curry's running across the court right there, and then we had another camera kind of higher up, so you could have a bird's eye view of the entire court, and then we had another camera at the very end that we put in that was under the basket. So you were actually under the basket while Steph Curry is shooting a three-pointer right there. And that's a seat that you can never buy, which is something that's really interesting for bringing fans closer to the league, the team, the sports, athletes, artists that they're interested in, really getting them a closer, more intimate experience.
And the rig that you're using, how many cameras are in the array?
So the rig that we have a proprietary rig. The individual cameras themselves are Red Digital Cinema. It's anywhere from 2 to 10.
No wonder it looks so good.
6K per eye. Yeah.
I wanted to ask you, so what has the reaction of fans been, and what has the reaction of the leagues been? I mean, you know, the NFL, sports is the thing that's only thing that's making money. No offense to anybody else. But what do the leagues think, and what's your strategy, and what's the plan now? What's next? Because this is television, because it's live broadcast.
Yeah, so we work very closely with the leagues. Most recently with the NBA, we've worked with the NHL, NASCAR, number of different leagues. And they really, you know, the NBA, Adam Silver said it as well. Before the ring ceremony, he came in and spoke with us. And he said it the same way that, you know, 99% of the fans of the NBA are never going to step foot on a court. And I think there's a huge difference of experience between watching in a 2D screen within a frame. You know, you have the moderators, you have all the commentary, everything happening. You don't really feel like you're sitting there on the court and feeling the action of it. Virtual reality gives you that experience, and it opens up the courtside seat or the court experience to a global audience.
So it's getting the fans closer to the players.
Right. And
so why not?
Right. The NBA, the leagues, all of them are interested in seeing how can we make this experience even better for our fans. you know, where are the fans going to be in the next 5, 10 years? And virtual reality, I think, is a really interesting area that is different from what you would get on TV. You know,
so,
it's not cutting away at that.
So you know this containment, that's important. It's not cannibalizing TV, it's enhancing the experience. So you know there's this continuum. You have 360 because Facebook enables upload. There's video, there's YouTube, and you can actually use WebGL and your phone. And then it goes all the way up into a tethered experience. What do I need to see next VR?
Sure. So right now we're really focused on the mobile play. You know, right now everyone in this audience has a virtual reality device in their pocket, which is incredible in itself.
You filthy woman. No, I'm kidding.
So this is a Gear VR. I'll be able to show some demos afterwards as well. And right now you would have a Gear VR. You go into the App Store, Oculus Home, you download NextVR. And in there we have a number of pieces right now that you can download right away and stream and watch. So we have a highlight reel from a Manchester United versus Barcelona soccer match. We have a preview from the Democratic debates. We have the Coldplay concert, a number of things in there. And then we announce right now, there's no push notifications in Oculus Home, so we kind of announce it through social media, emails of when we're going to have the next live streams up.
And just a really quick question. Obviously, you're growing by leaps and bounds. Right. How are you training production people? Because it is different. Right. And editing on the fly and broadcasting all those pixels.
So I don't work on the production side of it, but we have a stellar production team, and you know, DJ Roller, one of our co-founders, is a award-winning filmmaker. He's worked on a number of the camera rigs for IMAX as well, for underwater capture, 3D. David Cole, our other co-founder, has also worked in stereoscopic imaging, engineering on that end. He actually worked in virtual reality, the first wave, in the early 90s as well. So a lot of expertise on the technical side. Yeah,
you guys do, I mean, they do really good work. So,
thank you.
Daniel, so we're going to show your video, but I just want to do a preface here. Do you all know Fusion? It's a joint venture between Disney and Univision. Your audience is an audience, a millennial audience, that actually cares, socially motivated. The last panel was all about millennials in the other room, and there, Strauss Howe would refer to them as the next civic generation. The last one was the greatest generation that reinvented, from World War II, that reinvented the social fabric of this country. So you've got an entire audience that cares. I've noticed that Tom Shoes has a shoe drop video that in Peru that demonstrates what they do. You had the New York Times do the Displaced with Verse. And there seems to be this immersive journalism movement happening, Riot among them, Molly Swenson and Riot, and that's where Welcome to Aleppo was, that really is, I want to say, if we were all string instruments, our little empathy heartstrings are being plucked by this. So I love for Simon to show your video, and then I want to ask you how the decision was made, because you are a traditional network and a digital network, to go and start a division for this. Simon.
Everybody stand up, please trust me. I know it's immediately off the rails, but let's do it. Everybody please stare. That's what it looks like when 100 angry get there. Stare.
Ryan, do we have to flip a switch?
Hello? That's better. So to answer your first question, like, I mean, for us, we were, I think, one of the first companies to jump with both feet on this. A few of the videos that you see were some of our early experience. They're highly experimental. We're trying to learn how you model on 3D, how you stitch video together. The decision was simple. We saw this coming. For some people, it's a fad. We believe that this thing has real lasting power. It's incredibly powerful and emotional, as you said, in building empathy and telling stories in a much more powerful way. And I think we recognized that early on, and we decided that we're going to invest in this. Some of the things that you saw, they're not very exciting when you see them up on a flat screen. But the first thing that was up there where people were standing up, that was the first that I know full live show that was. Sorry, it wasn't a live tape show, but it's the first show with a live audience that was done on VR. And so that was the Chris Gethard show. It shot it here in New York, but Chris has a big global audience, a very engaged community around him. And so we wanted to give that entire community the possibility of being there on the show with Chris.
Well, and his community is, the word rabid was used earlier.
Exactly.
And his community is rabid. And,
Absolutely.
And I don't understand what he does, but I feel like that's because of my age. I'm like, I don't get this. You mentioned not a fad. Mm-hmm. And I'm going to go to Yvette in a second, but I want us all to think, everybody to think, up to now, it's like been just immersive experiences. You're immersed in an environment, you get to look around. We're just kind of getting to the point of storytelling. I think a lot of the obstacles for storytelling has been not just in the back-end workflow technology, but in the cameras themselves that don't have stabilizers on them yet, and you can make somebody easily sick, and I won't mention some of the ones that have actually done a good job of making me nauseous, and that takes a lot. But Yvette does not have that problem with Dark Prophet in the fact that you'll be able to enter a comic book world.
Correct.
Can you explain a little bit about that?
Sure.
Do you have something to show, by the way?
Yeah. Okay. I have a clip, but just to give you a little preface. So basically, Dark Prophet, it's a multi-platform storytelling franchise, just by definition and by media. I basically started out with a digital series that actually didn't premiere in the digital space. It actually ended up premiering at Sundance. That led to it premiering on television on DirecTV. And then a traditional comic book, and now I'm actually creating the virtual reality comic book series based off of the comic book. So Brian is absolutely correct, because it has the confines and the structure and some of the rules of traditional comic book storytelling, but now you're immersed in it. So I wanted to keep that kind of texture, that reality of for the comic book fans, and also the extension of the particular story that I was telling in the comic book side. So, and I knew this from the beginning when I actually created the printed comic book. So the artwork that you're gonna see, it's 2.5D, because I knew that I was gonna do VR from the beginning. And that's also something that I'm sure that we're all very conscious of. That's beautiful in the digital space, is leveraging your assets and having the fuller vision when you are telling multi-platform storytelling. So what we're going to see in the clip are some early experiments of literally taking some of the comic book art, extending that, and then creating more of a 3D kind of spherical worlds around that artwork, and then literally walking through panes and coming up with text bubbles, etc. Again, wanting to keep the context of a comic book, but now we're literally living in the comic book story world.
Well, let's see it. Then I have questions. Maybe we all have questions. So just quick questions. One, How is the sound experience handled? And well, I'm assuming we're inside a gear.
Absolutely, yeah. So we're basically using Unity and WebGL to to basically create the VR with all of the.
So WebGL is the software that the standard that allows you to move a picture inside your browser. It's what happens when you're watching video on YouTube, and the same technology morphs on your phone, and when you turn in any direction on your phone, you actually are seeing that.
Yes, so in terms of the gear, absolutely it can play on a variety of different headsets as well as cardboard, Google Cardboard. And then for sound, either you're plugging in your fantastic, high quality headphones, or we're utilizing different gear setups. So absolutely, and the sound is necessary to be fully immersed. But why this actually really works, and what's been really one of the wonderful things about actually creating this comic book virtual reality series is that in terms of looking at the cinematic story, the texture and the rules of the world of telling a cinematic story, doing it with animation, especially 2.5D, is somewhere in the middle between what we know in 2D and then this new world of 3D VR storytelling. So I'm able to, cheat in some ways. We can get around some of the health issues, I guess, for lack of a better term, and actually keep the viewer, who always has the opportunity to go off on their own venture and just stay in panels as long as they want, etc. But also I can really guide people through a story, more so because we can move through panels, different camera movements, etc., etc. So,
and they're not moving, you're controlling the movement.
Yes, you're absolutely controlling the movement. There's a lot of built-in interactivity. Actually, one of the things that we're doing is between the printed comic book and the virtual reality comic book, they're very much interactive with each other, where there are codes and different information that you're getting from the book that you're inputting into the VR.
When you say interactive inside the headset, so right now you have Oculus Touch, which actually allows you to interact. Is that the kind of interactivity?
Yes, absolutely. Oculus Touch, we're experimenting with actually some sound. Some sound functionality, and also, of course, eye retina triggers.
So I was, thank you. I was telling Daniel, I'm turning this off now because my arm is getting really tired. I was telling Daniel earlier that I troll the VR film festivals. It is my contention, you can agree or disagree, I should love to know what you think. There's actually a lot of bad VR out there. Absolutely. Do we think that the bad VR is going to turn off the audience, or are they going to hang with us until the really great storytelling comes about?
No, I think there's a little bit of forgiveness as you're learning technologies. I think we're all, training on it. We're learning. We still, some of the things that we'll do are small exercises. We'll still publish them. They'll get a little attention. But I think people are a little bit more forgiving now that the technology is early. I think they'll come to expect much better experiences and quality as this progresses.
So there's original content that's being created, and it's explosive. I mean, literally. It just, every day there's more and more content. And even the publications that are covering it, VR Upload and Greenlight, even they can't keep up, and K0. This is supposed to be a $30 billion industry by 2019, I think, something like that. I met with a venture capitalist this morning who has investments in VR. I was quite shaken after the meeting. He did say that he felt 2016 would be a shakeout year, that a lot of things would happen and the bad would shake out. You're here because you're storytellers. You and I, and you, I'm sure, we work with showrunners.
Absolutely.
So I just want to relate an experience which I told you, and then I have some questions about it. So part of what we do as a company is we educate about VR, and then we package. We put the VR creators together with the people who want to do VR. There are a lot of agencies doing VR. There are a lot of companies that are new VR production companies. So it's a industry that is like bubbling, and a lot of people selling, probably including myself. But these independent VR filmmakers, in one instance, this gentleman, Connor Hare, created this property called Real. And Real is a dystopic story in a dystopic universe about a woman who loses her husband. He starts out in 2D, and her grief is overwhelming. He starts out in 2D. You are inside the headset. It's for DK2 and now for Gear. You are inside the headset, and you're watching her in her world. So you're actually watching as you would any other story. And then when she puts on the headset, you become her. and suddenly you're in the character's point of view and you're experiencing her relationship with her husband who has died, and her escaping. I'm going to tell you what happens in the end, how she escapes into his world. But the actor was so good that you totally understand your switches had been flipped, your empathy switches had been flipped. And you look at this guy and he's looking at you, and I don't care what your sexual preference is, you know why she loves him. You can feel his energy, an excellent actor, and the perspective is perfect. It would be just like you and I, right like this. The perspective is perfect. That, I believe, is the power of VR. When do we get there? How do we get there?
I think you're starting to get there. I think, you know, as you said, there's a lot of experiences that are not quite that, but I think you're also seeing a lot of experiences that do that quite well and can build empathy. You know, you look at, for example, the work that Noni de la Peña has been doing at USC, the things that she's done on Syria or on domestic violence and things like that. They're incredibly powerful. We actually did a VR story as part of a broad investigation about juvenile justice in this country. And one of the pieces that we created, you know, it was a 1-hour documentary, a bunch of digital pieces, but one of the things that we did was we created a VR experience of what it's like to be in isolated confinement. And it's a very different thing to try to explain to someone.
Wait, was yours the mass incarceration piece?
No, the juvenile justice piece.
Okay, because there's another one on mass incarceration and the movement for solitary confinement, you know, to end it.
Right. So we did that. We put children in this country in solitary confinement.
Wow.
And that's a very difficult thing to explain what that means unless you've sat on one of those cells and you can think about what it's like for one of your children to be locked in that kind of situation. That's incredibly powerful. And I think you're going to see a lot more of that.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, I just wanted to speak
I'm
a
going
little
to
bit
move back
to
so I can see you. So
just wanted to speak a little bit to the storyteller point of view, because I mean, and absolutely, you know, we all come from that place, and especially, you know, me as a, you know, just a writer and a creator of content, regardless of the medium, it's always story first, and, you know, whatever platform supports it second. But it really is starting to happen from the story perspective. I mean, why it's taken so long in terms of this second wave, and why it's going to take a little while longer, is because we really are redefining the rules of cinematic storytelling. It's you know, this medium has its own set of rules, and understanding space, time, transitions, sound, everything in the 2D, what we're used to. You know, in 2D storytelling, it's just about redefining every aspect of it, except for a great story that is compelling, emotional, has a clear beginning, middle, and end, but with an interactive viewer. And that's another, not only is the world of it different, but the viewer, the person who's actually going on that journey, has choices in the storytelling.
But not always, right? I mean, there is a continuum here. So
not
there's this
always.
Convergence of story and game that's happening.
Yes, not always, but they're still in it. And when you're fully immersed in a world, it's just completely different than 2D. So even if you're not allowing them to interact, they're still in it. There's still more of a visual experience.
I mean, how many of us who've done this have watched people literally walk into walls because they just want to walk forward in the environment?
Exactly.
And you will be able to do that.
Yes.
And I think it's quite interesting that that people always talk about virtual reality experiences, and I was mentioning this earlier in a conversation between calling them content or experiences, and you have that difference because everybody comes out of it and they say, I was there. You know, I was in that story, I was a person, I was sitting courtside, I was at San Francisco, and I think that's really interesting that you have this switch of language between, you know, just viewing something passively outside of you, which is, you know, 2D or in a frame in a screen, and then becoming immersed in it, that even the language and the way that you remember that experience changes.
Well, I think that, you know, it's story as experience.
Right.
So, I mean, if you're getting inside an environment, I mean, literally, I mean, I don't know how many people, we talked about this last night, how many people have watched the Samsung virtual reality demo, Welcome to Virtual Reality, but it gives you the chills. It literally, well, it gave me the chills, but it literally, that's the first thing we always show because it's such an example of the emotional quality. And I just wonder, you know, there are all these tracks that are happening right now, and so I'm kind of relying on the television networks and live streaming because you have your challenges live streaming, but the people are still in a story, and the storytellers, I hate to be militant about that, but they need us right now. now is the time
Absolutely.
for this artistry.
Well, and again, I mean, it's just so early in terms of true storytelling in VR. We're at the inception of it. But there are enough storytellers that are really interested in the medium and starting to crack the code because it is redefining storytelling. You know, as I was saying.
Well, even from the I don't know how many people are in your department, but you just try. I mean, I've been lucky. I found, I think, the #1 3D sound designer in the world. He's absolutely a guy named John Hendicott, absolutely brilliant. But there's a shortage of sound designers. There's a shortage of cinematographers in this field.
Yeah, I think what you're seeing is, you know, as you're saying, it's the early stage. If you think about the early stage of the internet, when, you know, publications moved onto the internet, it was basically a PDF that we were creating because it was too early for us to understand the full potential of this thing. And I think you're seeing a little bit of that. You have a lot of people that have been trained in different mediums, and it's hard to kind of shed that kind of mindset and move into an entirely new mindset. And what you're saying is very important. There's narrative, but there's intention in VR. You can choose where you go. You can walk around. You can choose not to follow a linear path in these things. And so, you know, even if you have a mission within a VR experience, right? If you're trying to accomplish something, if you're trying to get somewhere, there's intention. You can choose to go a different path. And so the stories are not told that narratively. And so we just have to get to a point where we're shedding off basically how we've been thinking about storytelling and just think about it in an entirely new way. And I think that's going to take a little bit of time.
Yeah, and I just want to add to that, really understanding the storytelling rules of VR, because then that's also going to dictate the kind of stories that the medium is the best vehicle to use to tell that story. So, and those are like many experiments that we've been doing.
You know, the rules, the thing is that these folks, they got to get it right in live.
Right.
You know, so they're, you know, even just the distribution, live streaming, adaptive streaming, you know, that stuff can make you sick, you know, if it's not done correctly. But when you talk about the rules of storytelling, you know, you talk about literally the way the world works right now is that we're creating story worlds. And the story is at the center. And deciding what platform is appropriate there is probably, at least in VR right now, which is what everybody wants to do. You know, we've got 3-camera sitcom. Everybody knows that formula. We've got, you know, feature films. We know how to do that. We know how to light. We even know how to do 3D, thanks to James Cameron. We know how to do it correctly. But now you have this, and there isn't really a one-size-fits-all. You as a storyteller, what you're saying is you've got to make a decision about how you can best, I guess the word is, move your audience.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, you know, so when I look at, when I'm creating a VR story, I'm definitely right from the very beginning, I'm actually thinking, so how much interactivity am I allowing the viewer in this particular story? And that is like another influence in terms of the narrative, the experiences, the duration, what's going to be the best distribution for the right user to then go on that journey. I mean, there are many, many choices that are different choices for storytellers than they're used to actually thinking about. But this is, you know, all of that is part of it.
Speaking to that, you can cross the line. So how uncomfortable is it to put a child into this scene? Of course, they can take this off. But, you know, I worked in a haunted house one summer as a court jester. No comments, please. And there was a line that you couldn't cross. You had to keep your distance, even if the child moved towards you. Not just for health reasons, but because of fear reasons and scaring a child and damaging them for life. So where is the line that storytellers don't cross? I mean, horror is this huge genre in VR right now. All the horror filmmakers are so excited about it. But Daniel, you're gonna give me an experience to awaken me socially, to hopefully influence the choices that I will make in my life, to keep me from making mistakes. We have, just as a side note, we have like 3 public service announcements we're doing. One is on texting and driving. You can only manage what that is like inside a VR experience.
Right.
But our whole debate, we haven't even gotten to the production yet, because our whole debate is, wait a minute, no, you can't do that because this will happen. So where's the line?
First of all, I'm not suggesting you put your children in our sort of solitary confinement thing.
They're sophisticated. They're growing up quickly.
No, look, I mean, I think just like in all media, you're just going to have to kind of find the boundaries. There's going to be ratings. There's going to be, the possibility of blocking these things. Yeah, I think you have to rate these experiences.
All we have right now is comfortable for some. That's our rating.
Those, I think those are the normal growing pains of a new industry, right? You just kind of have to figure out the paces because they haven't been fully formed. No one supervises this industry in the way that movies or television are maybe supervised. And so I think maybe the platforms themselves are going to have to build some of the technology for people to choose. Do we want to if I'm a parent, I would love my kids to experience VR, but maybe I would like a function to make sure that distributor only shows them the right content, kind of a YouTube Kids kind of.
I never even thought of it.
And so I think a lot of the responsibility is probably going to be on the distributors because it's not a regulated industry in the way television and film are. But I think it's it's the kind of thing that the industry just kind of grows into and finds its paces.
Are you having story meetings with the VR department? Do they come and they pitch stories and say, here's what we'd like to do? Maybe it's an adjunct to existing program or maybe it's original programming, but what are those story meetings like?
Yeah, so we do a little bit of both. I mean, we integrate the team into our regular teams, and so so we can work on creating a television show in VR. Some of the things they'll work, for example, with the environmental group and think, okay, we want to go to Iceland. What can we do there? And they came up with this really cool experience that you could see that combined VR with AR. And so you were in a VR environment, but the narrative was driven by basically augmented reality graphics that were appearing on top of the virtual reality world. And so I think there's things like that you can.
Yeah, which I think will probably be standard because those two things, AR and VR, they almost have to merge. You should be able, when I'm watching a live sporting event, to actually move my eye and turn the leaderboard, and to be able to interact and move things around and bring up player statistics, all the things we do on a regular TV net and interactive TV that we would like to do.
Right, so we've done that with some of our sporting events right now. Back in the early summer, we worked with Fox Sports and the USGA on the US Open. And in that scenario, we actually were able to pipe in broadcast commentary, the graphics from that as well. So you were actually able to bring in a screen in the sky, which is kind of, a lot of real estate in your 360 world. Bring in a screen there. You're able to watch both the broadcasted version that you would see on television in virtual reality as well, or you could have that go away. You had a little bit of interactivity where you had a small screen on the bottom. You could swipe forward on the Gear VR here and the touchpad, and you could teleport between a different green, T, and that was one way that you could move around. And then sometimes we also do 180 broadcasting as well, and that back 180, in a sporting environment, you're going to focus 95% of your time.
In the front 180, yeah.
Right. In the back 180, we've been able to experiment with a lot of more interactive things like you were
saying. Yeah, the leaderboard for golf.
Yeah, leaderboards, making that back 180 really your second screen.
That's the other thing. I mean, Connor shot in 180. He didn't shoot in 360 because he wanted to make the camera work and the production serve the story. So he didn't just say, oh, I'm going into virtual reality, I'm having 360, and that's the way it's going to be. And he really didn't need it. He really thought through the story. And I have to say, going into the writer's room now to educate storytellers has been absolutely fascinating because once you give them the tools, then they begin to think of what's possible. And I'm very encouraged by that. I want to ask, and then I want to go to the audience, what you guys think the biggest obstacle is right now to the industry moving forward?
Distribution.
Okay.
That's simple.
And cardboard doesn't do it for you.
It's not the cardboard is a device, but where do you distribute, when we create these experiences, we put them on YouTube, we put them on various platforms. There's Little Star, there's, John, there's all these kind of, but it's challenging. It's still an incredibly kind of broken up distribution environment.
Not to mention measurement.
There's no
how long people are watching things for.
Right. I think the measurements will come, but I think it's still a very fragmented distribution environment. It's hard for people to discover these experiences still, and it's hard for media companies to really understand what the distribution of this thing looks like. Whether we launch our own app or we distribute through someone else's app or we just put it on YouTube. It's still the environment is still kind of evolving, and I think it's still a challenge.
just as a bit of trivia, the reason cardboard does not have a strap would be so you would go like this. Oh, look at this.
Yeah. Actually, there are some cardboards that.
Well, those are modified.
Yeah,
but the original ones.
Yeah, exactly. No, they're modified. I absolutely agree with distribution. Daniel. Yeah, with Daniel and with distribution. But just to add to that, it's also just again the understanding of many storytellers in terms of how VR fits into the overall story. If we're talking about both traditional and even in the digital, how does VR work into the story? So that's another gap. But I completely agree because I have the same experience. Once storytellers, they understand some rules and the possibilities, I mean, the creativity is off the charts. Yeah. So it's just a matter of getting the team on board and how VR actually creates a different experience and enhances and expands that story in a way that is organic to the overall franchise.
Yeah, and I think jumping off of what Dan said around distribution, you also have the other maze of hardware adoption. There's so many different devices everywhere from the mobile VR on the light end of Google Cardboard, anything from free to $25 to Gear VR, $99 to the Rift, to the Vive, to the PlayStation, which is console-based. And I think there's a lot of decision kind of paralysis around that of where do you go and why do I need this, which I think is interesting around the distribution and the hardware adoption of it. But another challenge I think is having consistent, compelling content. Something that makes it worth it. Why do I need this headset? What can I get out of having this, slightly clunky hardware? This is the first version. This is like the mobile brick cell phone right now. In a couple of years to 5 years, these are going to be glasses that you strap on. AR and VR are going to converge, and you're going to be able to go from full transparency to full occlusion in virtual reality as well. And so I think having a consistent stream of content is something that will be a big driver of how do you go from wow to watch? How do you go from the novelty of this is interesting, this is cool, this is great, I can watch it for a couple minutes, 5, 10, maybe 15 minutes, but how do you transition an audience and someone from the wow and the novelty of that to I'm gonna watch this. I'm gonna watch this game in virtual reality. I'm gonna watch this film, this series, whatever it is. How do you move them from that? And I think that's a really interesting.
I think part, just to respond to that, I would agree with everything that's been said. I also think that business models and moving beyond just plain immersion experience is important from wow to watch. But I think that from the educational point of view, once this gets into the schools, and that educational stuff starts to happen, and that generation learns to create, I think that might happen as soon as 2017. Wait. Questions? We've got like 5 minutes. I'm sorry, was that?
Google Cardboard is doing great work with expeditions
as
well.
Yes,
for classrooms.
Yes, please tell us your name and what you do.
I'm curious about how many devices would you say, how many devices are in the marketplace, just guesstimate, and also, what do you get any sort of comparisons with the whole 3D experience?
Yeah, all the time.
Sure. Guesstimates on the amount of headsets out there. At least New York Times sent out 1.1, 1.5. Yeah, over 1 million headsets were sent out. So in the cardboard alone, if you look at Google in their Play Store, you have around 1 to 5 million downloads of that. So that's a huge number in itself in the install base there. Around the Gear VR, they were on sale. This is the Innovator Edition, which they had on sale for $199, targeted at early developers. Probably maybe 100,000 of these. They've never disclosed numbers of that. But it is really exciting to see right now that the consumer version, which is $99, a little bit slimmer than this one, works with all the flagship Samsung phones, is already sold out. Best Buy.
And plus there are a million devices now, besides cardboard, that are coming out that you can put your phone into. I just want to say, Beth, you can go to K0. They are the most accurate statistics in terms of distribution and what's happening in the business, and a very, very good source for statistics. And as far as 3D, yeah, we heard it, like you're gonna fall apart just like 3D did, but actually we have saved 3D.
Right, so NextVR. Yeah. And about the 3D television, NextVR was originally founded in 2009 around 3D broadcasting for television. And as you know, the TV, those 3D TVs never took off. And I think a big part of that is that the value add wasn't great enough. You were...
And there wasn't the content.
Right. You had to buy a completely new TV, had to put on glasses, and what you got was one additional layer of depth that wasn't even integrated across all content, old or new.
As I told you last night, if you're watching Avatar on a 3D TV in 3D, there's no other great experience. So.
So 3D was really, I think, meant to see its prime time in virtual reality, where you're not only able to see that depth coming at you, but you feel completely as if you're in that environment. And 3D in that experience is 3D as if you would have it in real life.
And it actually might bring back stereoscopic 3D on its own, because you can see it in the headset, you know, and those of us who are hackers know how to move Avatar into the headset. So, next question. I don't see any. Yes. Clayton, is that you?
Yes. I have a question on data. How is data part of the business model in VR?
Analytics of data or compression of data?
Maybe both. If you could reflect on the data collection, data analytics, data period.
Sure. Data on the compression side, I think that's something that people are often curious about. You must be transmitting a huge amount of data. So luckily at NextVR, our patents are around compression. So we're able to stream our live streams of, of the NBA game or democratic debates or whatever it is at about 6 to 8 megabits a second. So you're really streaming at around the same rate as you would for Netflix or YouTube. And typically on a phone, if you're streaming, you're probably on Wi-Fi already. And then around data analytics, there probably could be more tools around that. We collect information around, kind of where you're looking for the longest amount of time, how many people are tuning in. But I think there's a lot of opportunity still in the data collection side of that, especially as VR moves into the ad world. And as you know, in ad tech, you're tracking everything. So I think that'll be interesting to see how those tools develop as you have ad exchanges for virtual.
And the head-mounted displays are getting much more sophisticated in eye tracking and movement and all that, and you'll be able to track that too.
Right, as in the Fove headset right now already has eye tracking integrated. So that'll be really interesting to watch.
So I just want to get we talked about the obstacle. I just want to get your company's goals, and then we'll wrap it up.
Sure. So, for us, this is not just about innovating and experimenting. We're doing a lot of that, but we see this as a very serious potential business opportunity. Needless to say, if you're there in the environment, the possibilities of market to you, of getting you to buy stuff in that environment, there's a lot of possibilities, I think, that we're going to see developing over the next year or two in terms of monetizing these experiences. It's very early. We're not really thinking about that much. It ties back a little bit to the data conversation. It's a challenge, and in part it's a challenge because of the same thing that the distribution. There's not a unified data that you're getting from all of the platforms where you're putting this, and so that's a little bit of a challenge that ties back to the same challenge that we had before.
Quickly, company goals for the next year.
So likely to solve some of the issues around distribution, especially for live streaming around sports. We're aggressively growing right now, working on a lot of strategic partnerships with global media powerhouses, so really becoming a destination more for those experiences in virtual reality.
Well, for us at my company, we create our own original IP as well as consult and create story, with other production companies, storyteller studios, etc. VR is absolutely it's part of every IP that I'm working on. There is a story, whether it's part of a franchise or it's its own original VR IP. It's part of every project. And in terms of future and monetization is literally, just coming up with the right stories for the medium and the format. And then what we're finding in terms of monetization is being able to bundle a VR movie with something else right now that may be more traditional. Like, for instance, for our comic book, when we do go to market, you'll be able to buy the bundle of the printed book, then you'll get the first episode of the VR series, and then also get a cardboard. That would be a bundle. That'll be a retail opportunity. So we see many opportunities to bundle VR into
existing properties.
Exactly.
Yeah, and ours is just to continue to work with master storytellers to escort them into and produce VR. So, Yvette, Helen, Daniel, thank you so much. I think, these are the pioneers right here in terms of VR. All making a lot of mistakes, but all making a lot of strides and successes. Thank you very much, and thank you.